Hi, this is Marc Childs from Davidson. Welcome to our video series on FMCG issues. Today I want to talk to you about Woolworths and just exactly what's going on in the big Australian retailer. It's quite remarkable when you think about it. This is one of the most successful supermarket retailers in the world. Yet we're hearing talk of them having lost their magic and being in trouble. Even of venture capitalists circling. And of course, departure of top management in recent times. So let's count off the issues that the supermarket business is facing. First of all, I believe they've been engaged in a hell of a lot of wheel spinning over recent years. Perhaps even since Woolworths decided some 4 years ago to, quote O'Brien at the time, take back control of the shelves. In that period, they've tended to want to do things all for themselves and largely exclude all but a handful of manufacturers in consideration of trading strategy and category strategy and so on. They've invested enormously in cat labs and in what I guess they think is smart retailing. Now, it pains me to say this because I'm a great believer in focusing on the shopper, finding out what the shopper wants and delivering that more effectively than the opposition. But the truth is that Woolworths seems to have engaged in a huge amount of navel gazing that's cost them a lot of money and hasn't really led anywhere. And the more I talk to manufacturers about this, the more I hear confirmation that lots of work has gone into arriving at clever new strategies at category level that actually results in nothing being done. So a lot of overhead added without much benefit. And in fact, let's compare them. If you look at the turnaround in Kohls in its first 5-year plan, they didn't engage in huge amounts of navel gazing. They were led by two very good retailers at the top who took charge, knew what they were doing, and made a lot of pragmatic decisions and got on with it and got it done. Woolworths seems to be ground to a halt right now. Compare with another example. Chemist Warehouse are going gangbusters at the moment. There are perhaps 4 guys in Chemist Warehouse who are making all the decisions. Good retailers, pragmatic decisions, they get on and get it done. And the point is that manufacturers love that because they know that when they engage with a retailer like that and when they reach agreement on strategy, it happens. And they get results from it. The other thing I want to point to is it's looking an awful lot like Kohls before the days when it fell over. Things like 8 layers of management between the CEO and the buyer. Whatever happened to the days when, and it wasn't that long ago, when Woolworths buyers were empowered and pragmatic and knew their category and knew what they were doing. You could go and do business with them, you could get things done, and you would know that it would be implemented because Woolworths were very good at executing at store level and at achieving high levels of compliance in their stores. So let's talk about what comes next for Woolworths. Of course, they're out there looking for a new CEO, and a great deal is going to depend on who they appoint. But it's going to be a tall order. This person is going to have to really be something because the problem in Woolworths seems to start at even a higher level, and that is at board level. So much so that there's talk of, bring back Roger, for example, as the chairman of the board, and bring in additional board members who know retail. Well, I suspect that that's going to be necessary even regardless of who they appoint as a new CEO. He's going to need a board, he or she is going to need a board that understands retail and it will work with him or her to rebuild the culture and to redirect the business. But let's talk about 5 big things that many of the people I talk to believe need to happen at Woolworths. First of all, pricing. Now, I don't believe that either Woolworths or Kohls need to compete with Aldi to their last drop of blood on price. But every retailer in the world knows that you can't be seen as expensive. That EBIT margin of 8% stands in Woolworths' way right now in being able to deliver better price perceptions. I don't know what happened to the $500 million that was promised some months ago to be fed into pricing. There doesn't seem to be a lot of evidence of it yet. We do see that price creep seems to have come to an end at Woolworths, but efforts to make the pricing in traffic building categories, not much evidence of that yet, it would seem. And in fact, commentators like, say, Bill Wavish, for example, who I think ought to know, believe that 500 million is not going to be enough anyway. So they need to reduce their EBIT margin, and that's a board level decision. It would seem that the stock market, that institutional investors have already built in an expectation of that, have already in effect given permission. So I don't know what's holding the company back. I think they need to grasp that and realise that they can't sustain those levels of profitability, and that in fact what they're doing is burning capital as long as they're returning that level of profit. The other is they need to do something about overheads. I've already mentioned the 8 layers of management between chief executive and buyer. I can't understand why that would be necessary. And certainly what it does is disempower the buyers. Woolworths needs to do a little less navel gazing, engage more of the intellectual effort from their suppliers, their manufacturers, and get back to being good traders. That's when they were successful. They also need to get people back in the stores. It's a big mistake for Woolworths to believe they can compete with the discounters on price or with private label. Both such strategies represent a complete misunderstanding of what the discounters are about. Woolworths needs to be successful in the marketplace using the things that it's good at. Get back to its base, and that also means, therefore, being good at store level and not stripping out all the people and, for heaven's sake, make sure that stock is on shelf and that on-shelf availability is as good as it once was at Woolworths. That means putting resources into the business, into the operational parts of the business that get stock to the shelves successfully. Well, that's my tuppence worth on Woolworths. I'm sure there are very many conflicting views on this, but that represents, I think, a collective view of what I hear from manufacturers and what I observe in looking at Woolworths through time as it evolves. This is Marc Childs from Childs Davidson. Thank you for listening.